Now, I'll admit that this one isn't for everyone in the room. So I'm going to say that right up front. This is not for everyone, but it is for some people in this room. Choose a godly spouse. If you're married, it's too late. You can just put something in your ears now, okay? Don't say, nah, he told me to choose a godly spouse. So I'm going to, no. This is for people who are looking to get married. You could be quite young. I see there's some young guys here. You could be older. But if you're looking to get married, this one point can save you decades of heartache. I can't tell you how many people I've sat with, whether it's the husband or the wife, and they didn't take this lesson out of Ahab's book. And they're paying for it every day, every week, every month, every year. Because what they find as time goes on is that they have very little to relate to with the other person in the room. They have less and less they can share. They understand less and less about each other's worlds. They find that they begin to go in different directions. And so I'm spending a bit of time on this because this can literally save you years of heartache. And so for some people in the room, you know what I'm talking about. You might already be married to someone who doesn't share the faith you share. Then you know the heartache that this can bring. But for those who are still making these decisions, they have huge consequences for future generations. And as I read before, let me read this in 1 Kings 21:25. I read this before, but hear this. No one else so completely sold himself to what was evil in the Lord's sight as Ahab did under the influence of his wife Jezebel. They very much were a package thing. He was bad, yes. He was an evil guy, but he still went and married a woman even more eviler than him. And she was the biggest influence towards the wickedness, towards moving him away from God and towards her God. This lady was bad news. She wasn't just not great. She slaughtered the Lord's prophets, hundreds, murdered. This is really bad. She thought nothing about framing and killing Naboth, as we just read, stealing his land. She persuaded Ahab to abandon worshiping God and rather worship Baal. Now, Saz and I do want to preach into relationships and marriage at some stage, or maybe not preach, maybe teach into it. Not on a Sunday, it would be something else. Not that we are the experts on marriage, but there's so much great content out there that will help marriages. And we feel that marriages are, and always actually have been, under attack by the enemy. It's difficult, and we want to get into that. But that's not for today. For today, the lesson from Ahab is simply choose a godly spouse. And here's the way you know. You're looking for someone, you're not looking for someone who's perfect, you're looking for someone who's Christ-centered. So if you haven't yet found a partner, or you are with someone, but they don't fit this profile, you need to do some serious inward looking. The single most important thing you can look for in your future husband or wife is not their looks. Amen. Don't say it loud with your spouse next to you. Amen. It's not their looks. It's not their bank account. It's not their ambition. It's not their job stability. It's not how good they are with your kids. Those are not the single most important thing. It's not even how much they go to church. It's not even how much they serve in church. It's not even if they profess to be a Christian. If you are a born-again believer, the most important thing to consider before you get married is this. Do they love Jesus? Is he number one in their lives? That's it. Because you don't want to go into a lifetime with someone who doesn't believe like you do. And we are not in this church into missionary dating. What that means is you don't date an unbeliever with the hopes that they will get saved while you are dating them. We don't do missionary dating. Why? Because it often doesn't work. We know the illustration. It's much easier to pull someone down than it is to pull them up. Well, that happens very often in marriages as well. And so we don't say, well, if they just spend enough time with me, I'm sure they'll learn to love Jesus. No, probably not. Probably not. We hope that that is the case, but it certainly isn't always the case. And so, befriend, share your faith, share faith activities, pray for them, trust for God to reach them, but to marry them hoping that they will come to serve Christ at a later stage is a very risky move. And many people who have done that are still living in a space of heartache and hope. But sometimes the heartache wins out over the hope. It's a difficult, difficult space. And so I think it's better to make the difficult decisions before than after. If you ask someone here who's been married and has a spouse with a weak or non-existent faith, ask them how hard marriage is for them. And they will know. But for them, it's a bit late to get out, isn't it? You've made vows. And here's the thing. If you have made that decision, and it's possible that you might be here and your husband or your wife is at home, or they're disinterested, they're not interested, maybe you drag them to church, I don't know. Then what we can do is we can pray. And we can really hope and trust in God to do something. Very often, in my experience, there's a woman who loves coming to church and her husband is disinterested. That's a tough place to be in. And so we need to pray. And you need to be the best witness and light you can be in your family. But we need to trust for God to do some incredible things in them. So I'm not trying to paint a gloomy picture for you, but you will know more than anyone that this is hard. And it's better to make tough decisions beforehand. I think it's better if you are dating, not if you are married. If you are dating, I think it's better to end things early and have the heartache before you get married and have kids than it is to have the heartache that comes with being divorced later, which is much more severe. Choose a godly spouse that loves Jesus as much as you do. Amen. Let's move on from this point. I'm not pretending these are easy things, by the way. These are all big, big things.